Once this is dealt with, I'm going to push the Land Rover to the side and work on other projects. I want to get back to actually making YouTube videos. By this, I don't mean this specifically, I mean the chassis, refurbished. I think when the chassis is refurbished and I can put all the other new bits back on, that's a good point to take a break. I know that you guys are hanging in there wanting to see more content, and believe me, I like making YouTube videos, so it's been a drawn out process for me as well. This Land Rover project will probably take me about 2,000 hours all up, plus the video work, and I might get 20 videos out of it, so if you split that up, that's 100 hours of work per video. Compared to something like the lathe, which I made 10 videos about and probably was less than 100 hours total. So the point I'm trying to make is that I want to get the Land Rover to the stage where it's a rolling chassis, and then I will work on other projects, simpler, quicker projects, because I like making YouTube videos. And I'll just work on the Land Rover in the background and release videos whenever we get to a stage that justifies releasing a video. Now, believe me, I'm itching to start work on new projects, but I'm going to resist that temptation until the work in front of me is done to the point that I mentioned. So that means this chassis needs to be sorted out. Here are the leaf springs, sandblasted, ready to go. That will be the next video you guys see, followed by the axles. And as you can see, that's well advanced as well. There's really no mechanical work needed here, and in fact the parts I pulled off, once clean, are pretty much ready to be put back onto the vehicle anyway. I think I will give everything a fresh coat of paint, but it probably doesn't need it. So that's the story of the Land Rover for now, and I'm still just as enthusiastic about getting this project finished as ever, but I'm also enthusiastic about starting something new. This is what I hate about being a renter. If this was my house, I would have fixed this door about 20 years ago. Instead, I'm going to be patching up this door again, just to try and get it to open and close, which it doesn't at the moment. These brake drums have just come back from sandblasting. Of course, they come back all dusty, so I've hosed them down, and then 2 minutes later they look like this, covered in flash rust. Also, you can see underneath that there's some darker speckling where there's pitting that they didn't get completely off with the sandblasting. So I could destroy my back and wire brush all of this off, or if I had a convenient sized container I could leave it in evaporust for a few hours, Or I guess I could fill up the bathtub with vinegar and soak it for 100 years. Instead, I thought this was a good example to show how I would treat something big, not that critical, and that's going to be covered in paint. So I am going to use this, which is a converter product, which also contains a sealer. But I don't want to go straight for this because that's just going to leave all of the rust in place. Even if it's converted, I would rather remove as much as possible first. So instead I'm going to start with phosphoric acid. So this phosphoric acid is actually converting the rust to iron phosphate, ferric phosphate. And most of that is just being flushed off with the liquid. You don't really want to let phosphoric acid dry on the part because it sort of becomes black and gunky. So I'll just keep it wet and then flush it off with the hose. Hopefully you can see, I'm not sure, but these deeper bits that the sandblaster didn't bother with, they're now treated, they're ferric phosphate, nice and black. And as you can see, the rust has all been flushed off the part. It's not going to stay like this for long though, so we need to treat it with something. And obviously this being a brake drum that I'm going to paint later, I don't want to put any oil on it. So I'm going to use this CRC stuff. This is tannic acid, which also converts rust, and it contains a clear sealer. You can just paint this stuff on with a paintbrush and it will turn out like a black paint, quite thick. I won't be using a brush though because areas like this flange, this is the machined surface and I don't want any sort of thickness on here. So a bit of a tip if you're using this rust converter. Instead of a brush, if you just use a rag, put a little bit on the rag and then just smear it on as thinly as possible. That will treat the surface, but it leaves virtually no thickness. Which is quite important on this surface because this is how the brake drums mount to the axle. Flange bolts up against here. And if you have any sort of gunk in here, you can tilt the drum out of alignment and then it will catch the pads unevenly. And you'll be forever wondering why you can't balance your brakes. Anyway. Obviously on all this part it doesn't matter, so I'm just going to slop it on. I'll still use a rag because I have it handy, but you could use a paintbrush. So here we are, the drum ready to go. That's ready for a top coat of paint. That CRC stuff is really good as a primer, so there's no need to prime this as well. The finished coat can go straight on top of this. So yeah, using two acids to go from crusty parts to something ready for a top coat of paint, that's two sciences. How good is that? This pantograph machine needs a clean. I don't know if I'm ever going to restore this because it's pretty good as is, but it is a bit grimy, so let's give it a tidy up. And there we are, one nice clean pantograph machine. I didn't actually intend to show any of this. I had recorded an entire segment about something completely different for this video, but I couldn't get one tiny little part that you would normally be able to purchase from any hardware store. So I had to abandon that whole segment and show this as some sort of consolation. Anyway, that's it for this month. I've probably got at least 4 weeks ploughing away on the Land Rover yet before I get into anything new, but I've got enough new projects lined up to fill this table, plus of course the Super 7, the Shaper. Anyway, that's for the future. I hope you enjoyed this little video. I hope you guys have a great month, and I'll see you next time.